just to quickly share, I'll try and not go too long into this because, folks were here last night, but essentially at the start of lockdown, KPC came up with a neighbourhood solidarity project, which was, a response to kind of changing how we did things to meet the needs that presented themselves there. It was supposed to initially be focused on the local area, but, the KPC community extends further than our local area, so it went on from there. What we wanted to do was to empower people to come together and look after themselves and each other, and to make sure that nobody missed out on the services and support that they were going to need, and also to create connection and strengthen connection within the community. What we had done was we kind of suspended our normal ways of working and reconstituted into 3 teams. One, which was about empowerment, so that was essentially, delivering the services and working with the squads and the teams of volunteers. One, which was about support, which was, about identifying needs within the community, and one which was about communications, both internal and external. The empowerment team were really set up to make sure that everybody knew each other, and that's probably something that we could have done a little bit better. We got really focused on trying to provide as much food and support, which meant that we didn't have enough time to really focus on, a kind of block by block organising approach, which is what really excited us at the start of the pandemic. And the main way that folks, were working within the empowerment team were delivering cooked meals and grocery packs to folks. There was about 17,000 kilos of food that went out, about 33,000 meal equivalents. And we also had, teams of volunteers doing everything from picking up prescriptions to walking dogs to, sorting people's gardens out as well. The support team, they were really set up to, first and foremost, check in with folks and make sure that they were all right via phone calls and text messages and other forms of communication, and to work with other organisations to make sure that folks were getting the support that we need. As I kind of mentioned before, we know that we can't and don't want to work in isolation, and we don't want to try and do everything. We principally work well as a space for people to come together and for a set of resources that people can use, and that's what we want to be. So a large part of the support team was also trying to reach out and link into to other folks as well. And the communication team, who were brilliant as well. We couldn't go forward with the kind of, abacus and chalkboard approach to digital infrastructure that we had before. So they were really instrumental in setting things up like a CRM, and as well as, new websites and communications and providing access to different resources for folks. But something that we thought, and we continue to think is really important, is getting the message out there. People have felt quite overwhelmed. When I say people, I mean me and everybody that I know. So I felt quite overwhelmed at times, and it's easy to think that that there's nothing that we can do, or that there's nothing that can be done. But we would always say that the most important thing, alongside, taking action yourself on what you can do, is sharing that message of hope and solidarity widely and freely. So, we done that through using our existing connections and setting up new digital support and trying to get folks laptops, tablets, top-ups, everything that they needed to be connected, and by creating, an online resources guide as well, so that we could also signpost to other people's resources as well. So, that's essentially an overview of what the KPC AOK project did. I think the other thing that we wanted to do was to, try and be as upfront and honest, and give you as much time to process the question that we intend to ask in the breakout rooms, rather than just ambushing you with a question, when you're in a breakout room with 5 minutes to think about it. And really, it's like, what can an organisation like KPC do to support somebody like you, so that you can take action on the issues that you care about? That's essentially what we have to think about as an organisation over the next few years, and we'd like to help you. We'd like you to help us with that this evening. So, that's kind of where we're at for the moment. And what I'll do for now, if it's okay, and I'll give a wee chance for questions that if anybody's got at the end of the next 2 presentations, I'll just pass over to Sarah to introduce the fantastic interview with the amazing Sophie.
Thank you very much, Martin. I will just go ahead and share my screen now. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this online event on empowering communities, where we've been exploring KPC's vision as a member-led organisation. My name is Sarah, and I'm here with KPC member and volunteer Sophie to chat more about her experience. So hi Sophie, it's lovely to meet you in this new digital way. So I understand that before becoming a member of KPC, you volunteered during lockdown. So I wanted to start off, if you could tell us a bit about how you heard about KPC and what motivated you to start volunteering with it.
Yeah, sure. So I've actually been aware of KPC for quite a while as an organisation that's active within the local Glasgow community in the south side. I actually work quite close to Original Building was cited, so I've definitely seen events that have been going on and heard about community activities, but up until this year hadn't had a chance to participate in any of those yet. In terms of getting involved with the volunteering, I think it was originally a poster I saw around the south side, and as I was on furlough, I was really keen to do something with my time during the lockdown that was a little bit more productive and possibly a bit more helpful as well. And KPC seemed like a really good organisation to get in touch with, and they were incredibly accommodating and very quick to reply. So yeah, kind of snowballed a little bit from there, which was great.
And you started off teaching English as a second language via Zoom, is that correct?
Yeah, so initially I think KPC had put a call out for volunteers who were in various capacities, whether it was kind of arts or crafts lessons, English classes, or just kind of social support setting. And as I'd done some teaching previously, I thought perhaps I could try and put those skills to use again. And so I put my name in for the English teaching, got paired up with a lovely guy from El Salvador, and we started classes on a weekly basis back in May, mostly just conversational practice with a little bit of grammar, but nothing too complicated, because I'm certainly not qualified in that sense. But it's been great. We worked together from May through until a couple of weeks ago in mid-October. Really nice to work with someone on more of a one-to-one basis, and just see them progress in kind of smaller steps throughout the sessions we had together. And yeah, a really interesting learning experience for me, as well as I'd only previously done classes in person, so the kind of online setting was definitely a new addition for me, as well as for him, I think, as well.
Brilliant. And we heard yesterday a bit more about the AOK project, and Lindsay told us then that they clocked up over 1,500 hours of volunteer hours from that project. So I just wondered if you could tell me a little bit about how you were involved in AOK.
Yeah, sure. So that came about purely because I think Lindsay had sent out an email kind of earlier in the lockdown saying they needed some volunteer spaces filled, and I said I could fill in the week that came free, and after that initial week another space came up, and beyond that it just became more of a regular fixture, which was brilliant. So I was going down on a weekly basis to the Clyde Community Hall just to help bagpack, essentially, kind of organise the food supplies which were coming in, working with Lindsay and Johnny, the staff members, and the other volunteers who were also on site on the day, and just making sure the food deliveries were ready to go out for when the drivers came in to collect them. So it was had to be quite a seamless operation in terms of getting everything ready on time to go out, but it was a lot of fun to do, and amazing getting to work with Lindsay and Johnny as well. both very dedicated staff members, that's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. Heard some of the numbers yesterday, and it just looked like an incredible project. And I've seen some pictures from inside Clyde Community Hall at that time as well, and it looked like there was a great team there.
Yeah, I think the volunteers that I met, everyone certainly was hugely supportive of the aims that the AOK project had, and I'm really glad I was able to be a small part of that in some way. And yeah, I think the response they managed to coordinate was phenomenal, actually. I don't imagine that was an easy task to bring all that together. And yeah, certainly the way that it came about and the time and care that went into it, I think was really evident as well from the staff members and the volunteers. So yeah, I think it was a pretty great project all around.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So I wonder, Sophie, could you tell me about a highlight of your time volunteering with KPC so far?
I think probably just the overall experience. I've had to think about this, but I don't think I could pinpoint one specific occasion. But I think just being able to be involved with an organisation that is really community led and has an aim to try and benefit the local community and make some kind of tangible difference to the people it's supporting. And I think just especially with kind of the pressures of lockdown and the obviously the social distancing that's been going on and still continues to go on, and just the stress that can cause people in kind of general lives. And I think having the AOK project and being able to be a part of that, which might have helped in some way, I think that probably was just a highlight, as cheesy as that sounds. But it was yeah, I think just being able to be a part of that project was pretty great. And the teaching was also really fun, but I think definitely being part of a bigger project, something that's bigger than yourself, was the main draw, I think.
Yeah,
getting to work one-on-one with someone, and when you can see a real progression week to week, is fantastic and incredibly rewarding in its own way. But I think really being able to be part of a team that's really working hard to try and bring about some kind of positive change for a bigger number of people, I think that's really something to be a bit proud of. So yeah, I think the AOK project so far, I think, has been the highlight.
Brilliant, thank you. You spoke a little as well about moving from teaching face-to-face to digital, and I think that's something that we're all sort of in a big learning curve with. So I wonder if there was any other skills, or if you want to expand on that you have been able to work on or develop during your volunteering time with KPC.
Yeah, with the online teaching, that was definitely a little bit of a learning curve, as you said. Definitely getting used to new technologies, and I'm certainly not the savvy person, so I think learning how to be able to use the online technology effectively for a lesson and produce something that is going to be engaging and educating is quite a challenge, but something that's still effective. But yeah, I think probably the tech side of that has been a skill that I've had to develop a little bit, and I guess maybe just in a broader sense, while being involved with KPC, or just like people skills in different areas and through different sections, and especially with the AOK project, there's or majority of people who were in receipt of the food packages. There's a lot of sensitivity there with backgrounds and circumstances people have come to be in that situation. So I think certainly just having more of an awareness of being able to work with people
That actually brings us quite nicely to my next question, and that was, why is KPC an important organisation, and what does it mean to you?
That is a good question. I think, given how long KPC has been in existence for, because I believe it's several decades now, I think the fact that they have managed to continue to have such a positive impact on the local community is pretty important in and of itself. I'm not sure how many local organisations could continue to be an active part of the community in that way for so long. I think that they show a very obvious desire to help local communities and strengthen them as well, kind of create bonds between people and really try and form a bit more of a social cohesion, which obviously is going to support people in a broader sense, because whether that's the original KPC cafe that was running, or kind of workshops or classes, or through the kind of newer ways of being able to respond to the different needs of communities and really show that there's something valuable in working with local communities, have a positive impact in the long run. I think that's probably what KPC does best. And I think especially in the context of this year, with the lockdown and social distancing, it's kind of more people together rather than life being so fragmented as it is at the moment. I think having this kind of organisation which can really work with people from the community is yeah, it's really important, I think. So hopefully long may it continue.
Yeah, and I think you've really tapped into the heart of KPC there, because what was interesting for me about talking to yourself is that you started volunteering and then became a member with KPC when after it kind of moved out of the building. So your experience has been in the digital realm or working out of Clyde Community Hall with the AOK project. And we've been talking during these events, and we'll hear more tomorrow about renovations on the building and getting back in there. So that kind of brings us on quite nicely to my last question, and that's what are you excited about in KPC's future?
Ooh, I think definitely seeing the new building opening next year. I think it will be, I mean, it sounds like it's going to be an absolutely amazing space, and one which should be able to be a real creative hub for local people, and beyond, maybe, who knows. I think that's probably a big thing to look forward to, and then just to see where the organisation can go from its point now. Like I think the fact that it managed to pull together such an incredible response during the lockdown earlier this year kind of really shows a determination and drive to be a positive force within the community, and to build on that. I think in the future, I think would be really exciting, and that could be something which could drive more interest in people becoming members, or just a wider awareness of what KPC does, and maybe people would want to be a little bit more involved in local activities as well. I think just the seeing how it grows in the future, and kind of how all the involved that kind of feeding into the development. I think that's quite exciting to see what happens next.
Yeah, that is all really exciting, and I just wonder, before we finish up, if you had any kind of final thoughts for anyone that was thinking about getting involved or thinking about becoming a member of the KPC.
I guess in the shortest way possible, do it. KBC's a really great organisation to be part of. I've had a fantastic experience with them, and it's been a relatively short time as well. I'm aware that I'm speaking from a position of someone who's pretty new to the organisation, and as you said, I've joined it in much more of like the digital era, and I think that it's definitely an organisation I want to continue being a part of, and hope that I can in whatever way that takes over the next wee while. But I would really encourage people to do something in your local community that makes you feel a part of it, and I think that can only strengthen communities, and getting to know who lives around you can only make it a nicer place to live, really. So I would definitely say get involved and see what you think, really. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sophie. I couldn't agree more with that. Get involved in your local communities. Thank you so much for chatting to me today, Sophie, and we will keep in touch with you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the online events that we have.
That was brilliant. Thanks very much, ladies. I don't know if there's anything that's more like 2020 vibe than like watching yourself through Zoom whilst presenting about community-led responses to a pandemic. It's maybe just our community 2020 vibe, but yeah, well done. Well, listening to your own voice is awkward at the best of times, and so yeah, well done. Sorry.
Oh no, just wanted to say really quickly, thank you so much to Sophie for chatting to me yesterday. We pre-recorded that yesterday because Sophie might have been running a wee bit late for the Zoom, and you know there's nothing worse than running late for an online event, never mind trying to present at it as well. So thank you very much. But just to say that after we hear from Mutual Aid, that myself and Sophie will also be available for questions.
Happy days. All right, just like to invite Yaz and Grace then to take the digital floor and give us a bit of chat from their angle.
Thank you, Martin. Hi, I'm Yaz, and I'm going to be presenting a little bit about Glasgow Mutual Aid. Give me one sec.
And hi, I'm Grace. I'm going to be joining Yaz.
All right. So the Glasgow Mutual Aid Group formed in March, and we formed as a response to the pandemic. You can have a look at our posters. So these posters went up just a few days before lockdown happened. And what we provide is a community response to needs getting food, prescriptions, and we can also help with mental health support. How we were set up by smaller mutual aid groups coming together and forming a centralized response as Glasgow Mutual Aid. Everything that we organized was completely virtual through WhatsApp groups. We communicate through Zoom calls with Google Docs, and we also use Slack to discuss some parts of the organization. So give me one sec. Grace?
Hey, and I'll take this bit. So yeah, everyone's been affected, but existing inequalities have been highlighted. So coronavirus offered people the chance to say that they were struggling mentally, financially, and physically without being personally blamed for it. Though a lot of their reasons were pre-existing and non-hierarchical. This can make people less reluctant to ask for help, as they know it's just their neighbours helping each other out, and they would also help their neighbours out in the same way when they're able to. And the idea of unregulated food banks is sometimes criticised because people think those who don't really need it will exploit it. but we found that people are reluctant to accept free food and other supplies, even if they really need them, because they're thinking about other people who are also in need. And needs-based, well, what we do is led completely by what people ask for. We don't have fixed rules or aims, and so we're totally flexible in that way. So if someone wants to help and someone else can help, then they can do that, as long as it's in line with our risk assessment and the principles of our group. So we never treat anyone as if they don't deserve support. And then I'm just going to show you this basic outline of how GMA works. And so you've got so this shows how we set up. The requests that come in on the phone picked up by the call handlers, and the requests that come in through the request form are passed on to the dispatchers. As of like a couple months, we've now combined the call handler and dispatchers, so everything comes to the call handlers, and they would pass it on to the various groups, so either to the mental health support group or to external service providers, that's like doing some signposting to other groups, such as setting up food parcels with food banks for people, doing call-outs of volunteers to deliver things, or researching specific items or services that people call us and they want. And our phone hours have changed with demand, and also with volunteer availability, but currently it's 10 AM till 2 PM weekdays, and then we have the evening check-in after 5 on the weekdays and after 4 on the weekends. So for the mental health support team, the mental health coordinator match people with a volunteer to do a phone check-in, and some people maybe even get called like once a week if it can be an ongoing thing, but we can't ever promise that there's definitely a volunteer. And there's a variety of skills, so some people with more experience working with mental health can do more complicated things, or it could just be for a friendly chat if someone's low or lonely. And we're limited in how much mental health support can be offered, but we do something like signpost to another organisation if we can't help someone. We also, so then the postcode coordinators, they would be split up across the city over different postcode groups, and depending on how many volunteers and how many area coordinators are in those areas. So some postcodes like G30s is just one big group that cover it all, but then we've got like G42 is one and G41 is one group. So it's broken up in different ways, just what's available. And we also have some groups of people who work together, for example, people making the GMA zine, or our accountability committee who do the mediation of disagreements, or the signposting group, some people that just look into signposting, finding outside resources. So once someone has gone through the process of contacting the organisation, they'll often stay in direct contact with the volunteer who helped them via WhatsApp or text or phone calls. And that's where hopefully we can build a relationship and build community. And GMA aims to break down the barrier between helping someone and receiving help. So it's not just like giver and receiver, but it's more like everyone can get involved. And it's not based on the UK mainstream presumption of like donor and recipient, because which can include like ring fencing or walls around what a resource can be used for or who it can be used for. Thanks. Yeah.
All right. Because we started up in the middle of a pandemic, we had to be really careful about safety. In order to protect our group, we had to make sure that we were as safe as possible when we were delivering any kind of provisions to people and when we were handling people's money. I think one thing which really helped is that everyone was a volunteer, and because everyone was equal, everyone took responsibility for the work they were doing. The autonomy of the volunteers actually allowed us to volunteer to a really high standard. And because people were being trusted, it meant that we were really taking care. So there's a volunteer agreement which had to be signed. But other than that, there's basically no other prerequisites for becoming a volunteer. We wanted to keep it as open to everyone, and we want to keep it as open to everyone as possible. The ethos behind the mutual aid is not so much one group of people helping another, it's actually how we can sustain helping each other. And perhaps one person may receive support from a mutual aid group, but then because they appreciate that support, they themselves might volunteer and get involved. So one way I can think of the autonomy of being a volunteer is, last week I went to a food bank to pick up some food for someone in my area, and they didn't have enough, they didn't have the exact things in the food bank which I needed. So I was able to go across the road to Farm Foods, just pay on my card, and then take a photo of the receipt and upload that to Open Collective. And then 2 days later, I got the money back into my account. So that kind of way of working, I think, really helps us to provide for people, while at the same time, we can keep people safe.
And I'll go through this bit. So some of our successes are the support we managed to provide by fulfilling the requests. We fulfilled the vast majority of requests in a timely and humane way. And people were surprised by how much we achieved and with so few problems. We did more and faster than many governmental groups and charities. Surviving the pandemic. I think it helped people through the pandemic to feel involved with helping others and doing something positive. And it also gives everybody the feeling of not being alone. And community knowledge. A lot of people across Glasgow now know more about their city and inequalities, and they also have more faith in their communities, that there are people out there that will go out of their way to help them, even if they don't know you, and that everyone needs something from other people and everyone has something to give. And self-organisation. So thousands of people have had an experience now of working in a way where everyone has the same power and say as each other, or you could call it a horizontal way of working. This grows the belief in the potential of self-organising and autonomy, and that groups of people caring for each other can do it themselves, and actually we don't need to wait for the powers that be to give support from above. Another thing is we received a resilience grant for £500 given out by the Interfaith group from the Scottish Government. It was kind of a success because we were recognised as being very essential, even though we're not an established group. Thanks, Jens.
Okay, so here are a few of the challenges. I guess our biggest challenge is that we don't want to normalise food aid. The majority of the requests we get are for people requesting food parcels, which shows that people aren't able to afford the cost of living. And this is something that the government should be addressing. It's slightly like we're a plaster and we're an emergency response. We're not, it's not really a sustainable response. And sometimes sometimes government run organizations like the NHS or social work are referring people to us, and we would never turn people away, and while we're really happy to help everyone, it's at the same time it's not exactly, it's quite difficult for us to have to continue doing this. Another challenge is that the people who we wanted to reach the most are the people who were self-isolating and who were already shielding at the time that we started to put up posters around the place. And that could be one of our main difficulties. And retaining and motivating volunteers over time. Because we're a completely volunteer-run organisation, sometimes work gets placed onto so you can do however much you want or however little you want. So this ends up being that because of our structure, like you saw before, it goes from dispatch to area coordinator. So area coordinators are sometimes left with a fair bit of work if they can't find another volunteer to carry out requests, or they can't find a volunteer in the postcode next to them to carry out requests. So this means that a lot of the work can end up being left onto a very small group of volunteers, while others aren't able to handle those requests. So yeah, this can lead to burnout in some people in our group. So how can we work with established organisations? I'm a volunteer for Glasgow Mutual Aid, but I'm also working on behalf of the Glasgow Social Enterprise Network at the moment. So I've been getting to know different social enterprises in the city and how they've responded to the pandemic since March. And yeah, so I think this is a really important thing to consider, because Glasgow Mutual Aid does rely on working alongside other organisations. A lot of what we do is signposting, and it is being able to provide for the community, because there are food banks which are able to deliver and other services which we can gain support from. So the best way we can work with other organisations is actually by communicating with them and having a centralised place where we can find out as much information about them and the work they're doing as possible. So one example is the Urban Roots Food Map. That is a complete lifeline to Glasgow Mutual Aid, and we're using it all the time. It's regularly updated, it's available for free online, and so those are the kind of perfect resources for us. And another way which we can work with established organisations is the fact that we have a lot of mobilised volunteers. We have roughly 2,000 on the list. I'm not sure how active everyone is, but these volunteers are really willing to help out with other things in the community. So different social enterprises or other third sector organisations there could be opportunities for our volunteers to get involved with those if there is a lack in one area. And then on the other hand, resources which other organisations might have could be premises or vehicles and other ways to just make it easier for us to provide for people in the community. And my final point about how we can work with established organisations is to do with funding and financial support. We have very little outgoings at the moment, and basically all the money which we get goes directly to emergency food supplies or topping up people's phones. And so so Grace mentioned earlier that we've got £500 grant from the Interfaith Network, which is amazing. But we may come across issues in how to get funding, because we can't make promises. We're an entirely volunteer-run organisation. We're changing, we adapt to respond to things. So we can't give solid plans of what we will do with certain funding. So another way we could work with established organisations is perhaps they could funnel some financial support to us. That would be really helpful. All right, well, yeah, thank you very much for listening to a little bit about Glasgow Mutual Aid. If you've got any questions, I'm really happy to answer them. I'm sure there's lots of stuff which we weren't able to cover in that brief introduction. And also, yeah, if you want to ask me anything about the Social Enterprise Network, I'm also happy to answer that.
Thank you. Thanks, Yas. I'm also happy to answer questions.
Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thanks very much. Just like to, I'd like to open the floor up to see if there's anything that folks would like to raise, either in the chat or just in a question. I know we can all get a little bit nervous when there's a big group, but just like to open the floor. Yeah, I'll kick us off then. What sort of kind of financial support and resources do you think would be most helpful then? What kind of things do you need? What kind of resources do you need?
Well, I guess it's like.
So I guess what we spend money on is like the example I gave earlier, if we need to get emergency food or emergency supplies, sometimes one of us will have to run to the shops and pick it up because the food bank won't deliver till Tuesday, for example. Like most of the time it is, we're just kind of in the middle and we're kind of coordinating for certain like kind of food provisions to get to people. But occasionally we do have to spend money buying those things. And also I think phone top up is another thing which we've been helping people with. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and sorry.
Yeah.
And sometimes we've done like finding large like household items that we've like found for cheap on Gumtree or something, and like we've said like okay, if it's £30 or something, we'll spend that. So yeah, just having that kind of thing as well. Yeah, and also top ups for phones and top ups sometimes for data for people to go on the internet. But yeah, that's mostly. And I guess, and sometimes like household things that might not need like nappies or something. And yeah, I guess we like no one's paid, and we don't really have, we manage to like basically almost have no running costs at this point. But something I was kind of just discussing was like reimbursing people. Like we don't reimburse for petrol, for example. And yeah.
Yeah, and we don't pay for PPE either. So people have to provide their own gloves and have to provide their own like antibacterial wipes and gel, which can actually stop some people from volunteering with us because those things aren't free.
Okay. Good to know. Anybody else got any questions, or would people prefer to chat in smaller rooms?
I was gonna ask like like Sarah or Claire or Sophie maybe about like if you're giving an English class to someone, do you also talk to them about like their other needs, or like how does KPC deal with that, or like how do you see someone kind of holistically and see like all the things they might need, or do you just, if they come to you for English class, you just see them for that?
Sophie, you might want to answer that around the English lessons, but then I don't know, maybe Martin or Claire wants to pick up about what the support team would offer separately from that, about that kind of support. I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the classes themselves, it was very much focused on like a educational basis. Like I mean, certainly with the student that I worked with, because we were working together for, I think it was about 5 months, I certainly got to know him as a person, and obviously through that you do learn a little bit more about their circumstances and their background. So it's it's not just a purely educational focus in that sense, but I'm very aware that I am not someone individually who's qualified to offer more of like the holistic support, as you mentioned, like that. I think that would need to be a specific support team who are in place to address any particular needs if there was anything that was like really flagged up. Whether if it was like mental health or just financial support or anything further. So in my experiences, the lessons were certainly just purely on like conversational or grammatical, but
It's okay to jump in, sorry, Sophie. From your point of view, probably the way that it would have worked, Grace, is that the support team would be in contact regularly with the folks that have kind of presented themselves, and then they would have identified that somebody was interested in English lessons, and then we would just sort of went out and tried to find a volunteer with that, and the support team would then kind of continue getting in touch with them. I suppose from our point of view also, one of the things that we became really aware of is like how heavy a load the support team is. I think it also like came from initially from the kind of aspect of, you know, safeguarding, we were like, well, if we're going to put people in touch with folks to discuss mental health issues or put folks directly in touch with people, we wanted to do that with folks that already had a PVG, so protecting vulnerable groups. But then probably as time has went on, it's also has been like, well, actually there's a direct route for those support workers to get support as well, and it's definitely something that we're noticing more and more. And so one of the things I'd be interested in chatting about afterwards is that we're going to run some mental health support training or contact some training providers to do that for us, and we've got some resources to do that. It might be really interesting to see if we could open up some spaces to folks that are involved in Glasgow Mutual Aid as well, you know, that those trainings would be helpful for. It's always something that's worthwhile for us. KPC is find out what training we need and then offer that training up to other groups as well, because sometimes, you know, when you're buying for 5 spaces on a training, actually you can have 15 for the same price. So I'd love to have a chat about that. But Giscard, I think, had a quick question, and then the time fairy is also telling me that after that question we have to go. But Giscard, how's it going, mate? You're on mute. You're on mute, Giscard.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you to invite me, and thank you to be part of this small discussion. So I have just a little question. My little question is based on support. The mutual health offer to people like BME people all over in Glasgow. But I don't know if maybe in the future people like BME or Black and ethnic minority, they can look, or maybe the organization can look how maybe they can fit with their Africa food and all this. That would be something maybe to think about it, because sometimes like during the last lockdown, some Africa people, there was maybe really maybe to have maybe look something like maybe their country food. And it's something maybe if maybe in the future many organizations can start look, because we live in a diversity community, and to look those part as well should be something maybe benefit, because the food is like mental health. Because when you eat your crop or something you like, that may improve your mental health, that may give you confidence. All this. Thank you.
Yeah, Grace, you want to respond?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, so in Glasgow Mutual Aid, we're kind of very independent volunteers, so everyone does what they want, but we also like, you know, we try and ask like what specifications for food, or like things that you like, or like something to match your cultural background. So we do try and pass that on, but we're sometimes going to outside food banks that are like Trussell Trust food banks or whatever is available in that area, or if we don't have volunteers that can deliver it, it has to be a organisation that delivers, so that sometimes limits it. But we do have the food point on Shields Road in Pollokshields, which is run by mutual aid volunteers alongside Southside Housing Association, and they definitely, like, as much as possible, let people choose, and they have a wide selection of foods from different countries. So yeah, they definitely try and give you something like that, and I think see it in a way as like it's important. It's not just any food will do. It's like it's really important to get food that you actually like. And yeah, I hope that is some kind of answer. But yeah, it definitely could be better for sure.
I'm just wondering if it's okay, folks, to kind of go into small groups for 5 or 10 minutes. I'm conscious that folks are maybe had in their mind to leave. Tara, I know that you've asked a question, and I'll make sure that gets put or it's in the chat. Maybe Grace and Yaz, if you could think about responding in the chat, that would be great. But Claire, I don't know if you want to put us into breakout rooms just now.
Yeah, I've just got everybody set up into breakout rooms, so hopefully you will find yourself in a room with a facilitator. If not, I'm staying here and I'll send you one if you've been missed out. Okay.
By a show of hands, would folks want to run on for sort of 5 or 10 minutes extra, just so that we don't cut conversations short, either physical or digital hands? And then Claire, you can leave us. Okay, we've seen quite a few in there as well. And so what we'll do for anybody who can't stay on extra, we will make sure that the answers in the recording go up online so that you don't miss out on certain bits. But for those that would like to chat on, and so maybe 15 minutes in the breakout rooms, or is that too long? Or is that all right? That would take us to 22.
Do you want to go? I was going to suggest 10 minutes, and then if you want more time, then. But yeah, if people want to go, then they want to go.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm always a wee bit over the top. All right, 10 minutes. All right, see you on the other side, folks. Happy days. I'm sure it wasn't, and I'm sorry that we kind of ran out of time. And it looks like there's some really interesting discussions to be had here around kind of decentralised ways of organising things and collaborations. But I could maybe just invite folks from the different rooms to feed something back. So if it's all right, because I know who was in my room, I'm going to ask Grace to go first.
I think we kind of discovered that it's very positive to give volunteers power, and that the more like decentralized you can get, and the more the decisions can be made by the people who are involved, and it's relevant to the people that are being helped, and as much of that can be broken down, like just people helping each other instead of the group giving money to people that are needy. But that's challenging because it's funding and aims and duties can make it very strict on what you're allowed to do. So I guess we'd encourage that. And I also just wanted to add that we have worked with loads of groups, charities and other groups that has been very positive, and that's like having their stability and reliability has been great, although everybody has had to change in these times, and so a lot of things have changed. That thanks.
Is there anybody from any of the other groups that want to feedback? Sarah.
I'll be real quick. We chatted in our group about just there not being a one size fits all for each community. So the importance of speaking to the communities and amplifying local voices, and that idea of time as well, about how partnerships build over time. And also talking about decentralisation, about how mutual aid exemplified, and I think KPC had as well, about how the smaller organisations can move money faster and get resources to people quicker than the larger organisations can, and how can we get bigger organisations to trust in that process, that even the small things about reimbursing for the receipts that Yaz spoke about, like that process is a lot quicker, and it means that people can get the money and help that they need quicker.
Happy days. Was there somebody else was there another breakout room, Claire? Oh, Alison's waving. Hiya.
Yeah, we had a team of 4. So we were talking about ways that things that could basically, how could we help each other? So with funding applications was the main one, thinking about like ways we could work together and possibly support each other. So perhaps some organisations need a bit of help with support and understanding the application process, checking over like support for English of writing of applications when we've got like the same aim in mind, or a similar aim, or something that would be interesting for KPC, and is there any possibilities for collaboration on that? But also references for like everyone getting to know each other a bit more, then we can support each other on different projects. But also we talked about the pandemic and how things are slightly different now to what we would have thought of before, because before pandemic, or hopefully after it's all finished, like desk space would be really useful in KPC for organisations, because it's such a massive overhead for people to afford. Like community groups or small organisations just can't afford it, so like drop in desk space and support for that. But obviously that's a bit difficult in pandemic times, because you're not supposed to be beside other people that you don't know. So it's a little challenging, but we were thinking positively about like what happens afterwards, and how we can all work together.
Yaz has got something to say.
Yeah, our group was also thinking about being more positive towards volunteers wanting to get involved. So for example, if there's issues of someone being able to get out of the house, rather than saying like, oh, well, you can't do such and such a thing, focusing what they can do. Perhaps they could be making masks, perhaps they could be getting involved virtually and doing something online. And also Mathilde brought up, who volunteers for KPC, brought up the point of Killing Park Complex, listening to what skills volunteers are bringing, and really listening and thinking, okay, what would this person like to do, and having a more individual approach. And so that's something that we were discussing.
Happy days. I don't know if there's anything else that folks want to chime in. I'm aware that, as always, I'm like, 10 minutes, and then 15 minutes later I'm like, anything else? But is there anything else that folks would like to share before we start to wrap up? Paddy, I see you motioning towards your camera.
Oh, could you see that?
Yeah, I could feel the thought flying out you.
Yeah, just when you're saying, it's a bit different kind of volunteering opportunities, my role ended up being leading the Castlemilk Together community food action response in Castlemilk. And we found, as you would expect in Castlemilk, every day and a granny wanted to volunteer, but with an area with higher health inequalities, there were literally folks saying, oh, I'm fine, I've only had 3 heart attacks and I've got COPD and I can't actually walk up the hill, but I still want to volunteer. So we tried to create different platforms for participation. Some of it was buying in kind of art materials in bulk and then dropping them at people's doors, and folk would make up week by week hundreds of art packs for children and adults that would then be picked up and put into the food bags. Others were folk, we called them our poster people, and it was literally just dropping off posters with updated information with cable ties and hand sanitizer and things like that, and they would just post their own bit because they didn't actually want to volunteer alongside other people for lots of different reasons. And the other kind of art side of things, kind of doing online tutorials about how to use them and things for online performances, so storytelling and just kind of to keep people's spirits up. So that's something we're looking at continuing, as well as how to enable volunteering in a way that is mostly about someone's interests and aspirations as opposed to what we think needs done, which worked quite well at the time.
Happy days. It's like I said it in another meeting as well. It's like fucking pandemic. It would be great to get everybody in a room, right, and be like, and start finding out, because there's like some serious, amazing initiatives that have went on and some great collective learning that could be shared. And hopefully by the time we get to next springtime, it's going to be a bit easier to do that sort of stuff. We'll certainly try and make our space available to bring folks together in any way that we can, because I know for years there's been amazing stuff going up in Castlemilk, and I think there's a lot that we could learn from the experiences of the folks that have been involved with Glasgow Mutual Aid. I'm supposed to do like this bit now, which tells you about membership with KPC, but it feels a wee bit like a hard sell, so I'm kind of going to mostly patch it. And was to say that essentially membership at KPC is open to anybody that lives in the G41 and G51 area. That's the way that we've kind of tried to take the approach, to say that as a community anchor organisation or a community asset, essentially we're a community owner, right? So we own our buildings, and we think that wealth, that asset is what affords us our privilege. Like that we have more resources because we can create financial and economic surplus from the asset that we own, and that we've got a responsibility to use that privilege to support other folks. And one of the things that we really wanted to encourage during it was when people got in touch with us and said, like, okay, I'm living in an area of the city, I'd like to get involved. Our first question was, right, okay, who's the community asset owners in your area? Because I actually go and get involved with them and join them and take this spirit and this ethos that you've got. There are more and more community assets all around the city, and again, and there's going to be more, which to a certain extent it starts to touch on some of the problems that we talked about earlier on before the call with Yaz and I, being like, how do we, work as empowered citizens, but at the same time not absolve the state of all the responsibility that it should have for providing services, and it's probably something that we're going to have to figure out. But we'd just like to say that if anybody's interested in understanding how they can be more involved with KPC, and that doesn't mean come and join what we want to do, that means come and join KPC and use that platform for what you want to do, because quite simply, KPC can't and won't exist by trying to do everything itself. So it has to be there as a platform for people that want to be involved and make use of the resources that are there to go on and do what they feel is needed alongside others that feel the same. So we would just encourage folks to check that out on our website. There's some other interesting information again about some new stuff that we're doing, which is a local place plan, which is again essentially bringing together community members from across our local area, asking them what's important to them and what they want to change, and getting that submitted to the planning department, so that future developments within the local area have to take recognisance of what it is people actually want to see happen. So for kind of more information on that sort of stuff, please get in touch, and we'll certainly be in touch with Glasgow Mutual Aid to see about offering up some of the training opportunities that we've got for staff and volunteers over the coming months to folks that are involved in Glasgow Mutual Aid. But I should probably shut up and just say thanks very much for coming along, especially, Claire wants to say something.
I just wanted to say that obviously we're having a chat box issue, so if anybody was talking to somebody and you need to exchange details and that was problematic, you should all have my email through the Eventbrite, so I can link people up afterwards if that's needed.
Yeah, non-hierarchical organising, but we're not letting you talk to anybody. That wasn't our plan. We're not trying to be gatekeepers, promise. Thanks very much, especially to the folks that presented, especially to the folks that chipped in, and hopefully we'll see you all at some point soon, and looking forward to welcoming you back into a bigger, brighter, warmer KPC in the summertime.